There's two main changes for students applying for New South Wales selective high schools in the next few years. And so in this video, I'm going to share what these two key changes are so you're prepared for them and so you can actually use them to give your child a big advantage in preparing for these schools. Now, of course, what are the different selective high schools in New South Wales? There's a lot, there's more than 40. These are the top 20 ranked by their Year 12 results. And so if your child's looking to get into one of these schools or other schools as well, which are selective, then there is these two key changes that have been made to the exam the students have to sit to get into these schools. So the key thing is with all the selective schools you can see on screen here and the other ones as well which aren't listed, is that the exam, so it's called the placement test, is really the number one factor that determines if students get into one of these schools or if they don't. If your child does extremely well on the placement test, then that's going to allow them to get into one of these top 10 or top 20 schools. And so maximizing your child's preparation for the exam and giving them as much of an advantage on that exam as possible is really what we want to do if you want to get your child into one of these schools. There is two key changes to the exam. The first one is that it's now a computer-based assessment. So it used to be an exam that students sat with pen and paper. They would go into the exam hall. They would be doing writing with a pen. They would be doing the multiple choice sections with a pen and pencil. However, this is now computer-based. And so that is a bit of a change. Some students have sat computer-based exams before. Some students haven't. Either way, it's something you want your child to be prepared for, because it is something that can stress some students out. Some parents say to me, my child's not that confident with technology yet, or if I'm not there, I'm stressed that they're not going to be prepared for that sort of environment. And so it definitely is something you want to prepare your child for. Personally, what we do with our students is we've built a practice question platform, a mock exam platform, which mimics the exam experience. So it's as close to the real exam environment as possible, so that your child can sit 10 to 15 mock exams in that environment before the exam, so there's not too many surprises. They're used to it. Because a lot of parents often say, well, is the writing section, is that with pen and paper? And even that is actually typed online. And so you do want to make sure, number one, because the exam is now a computer-based assessment, your child's used to what that experience will look like, because it is a little bit different to just always sitting pen and paper exams at school, for example. Second change is the weighting for each section of the exam has now changed. So now every single section on the exam, there's 4 sections, they're worth the same amount. They're worth 25%. So reading's worth 25%, maths is worth 25%, thinking skills is worth 25%, but writing is actually the section which is worth more. It used to only be worth 15%, now it's worth 25%. A lot of parents have told me they're a little bit concerned about this because writing's a section where their child's not as strong, or even for the students who are actually quite strong writers at school, they find this exam difficult. There's kind of a few key things that make writing hard on this exam. One thing is it's generally the last exam that students will sit. So they would have done reading, maths, thinking skills first, and then at the end, they'll do writing. And so because it is a long exam, it takes about 2.5 to 3 hours. Most students, by the time they get to writing, they're pretty exhausted. And so one thing you will want to prepare your child for is sitting these 3 other sections first and then doing writing. Because otherwise what I see happen to a lot of students is they'll just sit, for example, a reading exam one night, they'll do maths one night, they'll wake up when they're fresh and do a writing piece. But that's quite different to the real exam, where you have to sit them back to back to back to back. It's a very different experience. And often the first time students do that, their writing scores and just the quality of their writing overall drops dramatically. And so that's one key thing with writing. The second thing is the prompts, which just means what your child has to write on this exam. Unfortunately, they're not the most straightforward. So they can ask a lot of different things. They can ask your child to write, for example, a newspaper article, an email, a journal entry, a story. They can really ask a very large range of different things. And that means that students who don't know how to structure those different pieces of writing, for example, if they ask your child to write a newspaper article or a letter, if your child doesn't understand the specifics of what does a newspaper article need to include, what does a letter need to include, they're going to be marked down. And so learning how to structure all these different types of pieces of writing is one key thing. The other thing though is just because the prompts, so what they have to write on, are fairly difficult, if your child can just become a very strong writer overall and have very strong writing skills, it can be a section where they can actually really differentiate themselves. And so personally, what we recommend is we get our students writing every single week and we give them feedback on their writing every single week. If they do that for a sustained period of time, you can imagine not only do they become pretty comfortable with the different types of things that they can see on the exam, but their overall writing skills just really improve. So for example, at school, their teachers are like, wow, they've improved a lot in writing, because most people are not writing every single week and getting feedback. And so this exam's a good chance to really drill your child in writing, improve their writing skills pretty significantly, which is going to give them a big advantage on this section, which I would say, if you ask me what's the quality of writing on this exam, it's not that high. So your child can really become quite good at this section through that sort of really focused practice. And so overall, they're really the two key changes. It's now a computer-based assessment, so you want to make sure your child's confident with that. They know what it'll look like, they'll know what to expect. But also, there's been a bit of a change in how much each section's worth, particularly writing is now worth more. And so it's a section where your child really will need to do well on it. In terms of what it actually takes to get into one of those top selective high schools that we looked at here, so generally about 17% of students who sit the placement test will receive an offer to one of these schools. But if your child wants to get into one of these top schools, particularly the top 5 or the top 10, they'll need to do a little bit better than that. So generally what we recommend is aim to be in the top 10% for each section of the exam, and that's going to give your child the best possible chance of getting into one of these schools. And so good luck. I wish your child the best of luck in their preparation. If you're looking to get my help and my team's help in helping them prepare for the exam, then you can book in for a call with us below this video. Otherwise, I'll be posting a lot more videos like this, also training videos on the different sections of the exam, and so you can look out for those as well.